Good afternoon. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Education. Today is Monday, April 13th at 3:00 p.m. We are in hearing room 229. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. The Zoom meeting and YouTube live stream event will include this 3:00 agenda for the Committee on Education. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Monday, April 18th, 2022 at 3:00 p.m. and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. I'd like to take this time to remind our testifiers that due to time restrictions on our hearings, we will be limiting testimony to 1 minute per testifier per bill. For people participating remotely, please remain muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. When I call your name, unmute yourself and your time will begin. After your minute is completed, staff will mute you so that we can move this hearing along in an orderly and efficient manner. Thank you. First on our agenda is let me introduce my committee. I have Senator Kurt Favela here to my left, and I'm sure the other committee members will be joining us shortly. A lot of them are still in other meetings. Sorry, this is on the countdown, so. Okay, so GM 784, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Early Learning Board gubernatorial nominee, Carrie Urosevich, for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. Carrie, are you there?
I am.
I'm sorry, and I see Carrie and Bob Peters. Bob Peters is signed up to testify. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, thank you, Chair Kadani and members of the committee. The Early Learning Board stands in strong support of the confirmation of Carrie Urosevich to continue serving on the Early Learning Board as a representative of the Hawai'i Early Intervention Coordinating Council. Carrie brings many years of experience in the early childhood field, and her particular sensitivity and respect for the segment of the community that early intervention is important to keeps our focus as a board on the needs of those children and families without losing sight of our system building efforts. Thank you for this opportunity to offer strong support for Carrie's confirmation.
Thank you, Bob. And we have several other written testimonies all in support of Carrie's nomination. Thank you, Senator Drew Kanuha to my left. Thank you for joining us. And Senator Donna Mercado Kim, my vice chair. Carrie, would you like to make a statement, please?
I would. Chair Kadani, Vice Chair Kim, and Senate Committee on Education members, mahalo nui for the opportunity to extend my appointment to the Early Learning Board for another 3 years, representing the Hawai'i Early Intervention Coordinating Council. My desire to serve stems from 3 main seeds. The first is my own experience as a mom of 3 and the challenges I faced when my own Kiki were young. It was extremely difficult navigating the early childhood system. I had a very hard time finding affordable and quality childcare and preschool programs, specialized services for my youngest child, and community family support programs. And I'm someone who doesn't struggle meeting basic needs. For the tens of thousands of families that do struggle with meeting basic needs, navigating the system is almost impossible. When I worked in direct service with families, helping them access resources and supports, I was able to experience with them the firsthand challenges of filling out government forms, navigating language barriers, not being able to find needed information in the sheer isolation they were experiencing. Secondly, I believe I have skill sets that can assist the EOEL to fulfill its mission. My background is in systems building, planning, policy, and conflict resolution. In statute, the EOEL is charged with the complex work of coordinating the early childhood early learning system. I enjoy working in complexity and untangling systemic challenges, and I've really enjoyed working with my peers on the Early Learning Board to strengthen EOEL's capacity. Third and finally, my North Star in all of the work that I've done over the last 3 decades has been focused on growing peaceful and just communities. The health and well-being of our keiki and our families are at the core. When our families are doing well, our schools, our workplaces, our communities, and our economies do well. Conceptually, it's a relatively simple cause and effect. Hawaii ranks 7th from the bottom nationally in its investments in children, which for me is contrary to how I feel we value our keiki locally. Yet budgets reflect values. I hope to continue to work with policymakers to ensure the state invests more in our keiki, particularly in our youngest keiki, so that we prevent downstream, costly, and ongoing community challenges. Again, mahalo nui for your consideration in appointing me for an additional term and serving as an early learning board member.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Members, are there any questions? If not, Carrie, I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
So in your written response, and thank you for sending in your response to the questions, you noted that you wanted to create a goal for EOEL to use the Early Childhood State Plan as the EOEL strategic plan moving forward. I just wanted to note that I think the Early Childhood State Plan is, has a lot of components in it that are really Department of Health and Department of Human Services. So I'm not sure how they would meld into the Early Learning Board. And so you're in your evaluating a future EOEL director's effectiveness of their role using the Early Childhood State Plan, how would that work? What did you particularly like about state plan that you wanted to meld into the strategic plan?
Sure. So for me, the Early Childhood State Plan reflects the statute and what Enact 178, or what the Executive Office of Early Learning is supposed to be doing in terms of coordinating the early childhood system. So it's the most comprehensive plan that EOEL has currently to look at that system. And so for me, they really are and should be tasked with that implementation, working collaboratively with the other state departments. So they wouldn't be doing direct implementation, probably on only certain components of that state plan, but coordinating with DHS and DOH and the Charter School Commission, as well as Department of Education, on making sure they're implementing their pieces. So it's more of a coordination role, but what comes with that is significant staffing needs to do the tracking and monitoring that's required to demonstrate progress against the plan, making sure that we have coordination support on bringing the partners together in a really meaningful way, telling the stories of success, making sure that we're advocating in the ways necessary to support the plan. So it's that infrastructure that's required to meaningfully implement a strategic plan is what I feel EOEL needs support around.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things noted in last week's hearing with the other nominees for the Early Learning Board, the EOEL, was that they have, was it 17 members? They have 17 board members, which makes it difficult not just to come to conclusions and decisions, but to even have all of them at the meeting. So do you think that there needs to be a reshuffling or reorganization of the board?
It's a very good question. I can't answer that clearly because I really feel that first, what has to be evaluated is the scope of the Executive Office of Early Learning. So if we continue to stay with the scope and the complexity that the office has been charged with, then I do believe we need a representative board because the system is very complicated. But if we move more towards the scope of EOEL being early childhood education, childcare and preschool focused, then I think we need to really revisit the structure that we have in place. I haven't experienced personally on the board a challenge of reaching decisions, or quorum can sometimes be a problem, but reaching decisions really hasn't been the issue. It is a large board, I think, for a chair to try to navigate, particularly around communications and things like that in committees. But for me, if the scope is going to remain as complex and broad as it is in Act 178, then we need a representative board. And I would strongly suggest that we have county representation, because EOEL is tasked with statewide implementation and coordination. And without the counties there, it makes it very difficult to understand the needs of neighbor islands in an intentional way.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
In your response, you also noted that the Executive Office of Early Learning needs significant resources to achieve its mission. You also noted that the amount needed will depend on whether or not EOEL continues to provide direct services or plays more of a systems coordination role. In which direction do you believe EOEL should go?
I believe they should go in the direction of more systems building and less direct service. The Executive Office of Early Learning has done an exceptional job, in my opinion, of standing up the public pre-K program, setting the quality standards, working with the principals and the complex area superintendents to get that program up and running. And I think it's just me, I'd have to consult others, but I do believe that the Department of Education could run that program, and Executive Office of Early Learning could really focus on the bigger systems pieces that are required around integrated data systems, quality improvement, and continuing learning systems, the coordination pieces that are required to implement the state plan, those bigger pieces that are beyond just program implementation. So that would be my hope moving forward.
Okay, I won't comment on the Department of Education running that program, but I will ask you, as a current board member, have you advocated for a board-approved budget that increases the resources provided to the EOEL?
We have.
You have?
We have, yes.
So there has been prior discussion on this issue.
There has been. I mean, they asked for incremental increases, but again, it's to implement the public pre-K program. I would hope that we would get to a point where we would understand in real concrete terms the cost of implementing the early childhood state plan, because for me, that's the cost of coordinating and implementing the early childhood system in a really intentional way. And if we understood that cost, that would give the board more clarification of what we should be promoting and supporting for the Office of Early Learning.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And your willingness to continue. Members, any questions? If not, thank you very much, Carrie. Aloha.
All right, aloha.
Okay, next on the agenda is GM 801, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Education gubernatorial nominee Damian Barcarsi for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. To testify, on Zoom, Malia Nobrega Oliveira.
Aloha, Chair Kidani and members of the Senate Committee. Aloha.
Aloha.
I'm calling in today from Kauai, and I'm representing the Moku o Manokalani Po Kauai Council of Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. And we submitted our testimony in strong support of this confirmation for Kaimana Barcarsi. Moku o Manokalani Po has worked with Mr. Barcarsi in different settings that range from general education in Hawaii, Hawaiian language and culture-based education, and other civic and social issues. We have witnessed his leadership and commitment to promoting excellence and equity for our keiki and our community. We feel that his experience with policy formulation and ongoing work on committees like the Human Resources and Student Achievement will be of value to the work ahead for the Board of Ed. Mahalo nui, aloha.
Hello, and aloha to you too. Next, Susan Piccola Davis, also on Zoom. Susan?
Okay, I was waiting to be unmuted. Good afternoon, Chair Kidani and board members. I'm testifying in strong support for Kaimana Barkase to have his membership on the Board of Education extended. He is an active board member. His strong knowledge of the Hawaii culture lends a perspective that is true Hawaii. He adds depth to discussions and poses relevant questions. He actively participates at all meetings. Thank you for providing him the opportunity to get confirmed for an extension of his continuing service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Members, questions of Susan? Next to testify in person, Sherry Nakamura, AA Coalition. Sherry, please.
Aloha, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and members of the committee. My name is Sherry Nakamura, Director of He'e Coalition. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of the nomination of Kaimana Barkase for a second term on the Board of Education. Kaimana has been a firm but fair voice at the BOE when it comes to understanding how DOE will spend state and/or federal funds. He consistently asks for essential information such as data, which should inform good planning, a plan that everyone can understand, and specific timelines so that everyone knows when things are supposed to be done. He is also not afraid to inform the DOE when they have not provided sufficient information or information in a timely manner to go back and redo things to meet the BOE's expectations. Kaimana's deep knowledge of Hawaiian language and culture also keeps the BOE and DOE grounded in Hawaii and keeps a focus on equity in education in our system. We urge the committee to support his nomination. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Sherry. Members, any questions? If not, there are about another 35 written testimonies in support of this nomination. And I'd like to invite Kaimana Barkase to the seat, please. And would you like to make an opening statement, please?
Ai. Aloha nui mai e na keneko hano hano o Po'okidani, o Hope Po'okim, o Lala Kanuha, o Lala Fevela. Aloha.
Aloha.
I really do appreciate the opportunity to be considered for another term to serve our keiki. This past 3 years has been very eye-opening for myself. I had never imagined that we would end up in a pandemic and really having an opportunity to overhaul a system that really needs it. I found a lot of solace in myself when things got a little bit of crazy and really tried to recenter around the students. School visits for me was something that was very, very important to really get to hear from our educators, but more importantly, from our keikis and our families. And that is why I'm here today, to continue service in any way I can. And I would mahalo you for that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Kaimana. And also thank you for your willingness to serve another term and to be engaged in those very long meetings. In your response, your written response to the committee, you noted the need to resume discussions with community partners to strengthen public support and buy-in to our public education system. Can you elaborate on that comment?
Yes, most certainly. In the first 8 months of my initial term, I was super encouraged by a lot of progress that was made. We had a lot of reach out from our community supporters. One particular item was we had a meeting at our board offices with the Hawaii Executive Roundtable Education Committee, and then a lot of members of our business communities. And they expressed a huge desire to be working with our schools. They expressed the frustration that they often have to look outside of Hawaii to find worthy candidates or willing candidates to fill a lot of the jobs that we have here in Hawaii. They recognized, and so did we, that we need to start creating a bridge. Not just saying we're going to do it, but then putting resources towards it. When I talk to teachers and other educators, they would love to have the support of the business community. But putting that extra kuleana on them at this point in time when they have so much other things to do, it is really hard. They're already spending a lot of dollars out of their own personal pockets of money. They're already spending more time than a lot of us realize. So we started initial talks on how do we create that bridge? How do we find those, and most likely from the business community, that would be willing to take on that charge. Now, these discussions were very preliminary, where initially we were really encouraged about that, and then the pandemic hit. And we had to really shift to student safety to make sure that our students were safe, that they were fed. We realized that a lot of our, especially disadvantaged children, they get a lot of their stability at our schools. So we really had to do as much as we could to shift and get into that mode of jumping right back into business, not having a gap and waiting to see what happens, even though we really had no idea what was going to happen. In the meantime, a lot of our business supporters continually supported through testimony, through phone calls, but they too realized that this wasn't the time. Now that the pandemic is, I wouldn't say under control, but we have a better grasp on where it may be going and how we might better adjust to it. I believe now is the time for us to pick up these conversations, to reach back out to our partners. And a lot of them have been waiting for that. And I think by doing so, we can create that bridge and the opportunities for our students. It really breaks my heart when a lot of our keiki leave because they don't perceive that there's something here for them. And in a way, they're right. But how do we make something for them? And how do we empower them to create these opportunities for themselves through our education system?
Thank you for that, Kaimana. So if reconfirmed, what areas do you think we need to plan to focus on first? And you talk about the need to increase opportunities to recruit and grow our own teachers and educators. Is that something that you think we should start first, or do you have other ideas where we should
I
start?
apologize. I didn't hear the last part of that.
The need to increase opportunities to recruit and grow our own teachers. Is that someplace where we should start, or are there other areas where we should start first to focus?
I think we need to continue on that area to recruit our own teachers and to recruit more teachers. But something that has become really apparent, especially during the pandemic, is that teacher recruitment is not enough. We need to combat our teacher loss. There's been so many people that have retired because of the pandemic or during the pandemic for safety reasons. But we're also on I believe, a really good track with your folks' support and the differentials for SPED, for hard to fill and Hawaiian immersion. That signaled the value that we put in our educators. Next up with that was looking at the compression issue to make sure that it's not just those in these fields, but all of our teachers are valued and have what it takes to make a living and that they're compensated properly. Unfortunately, again, because of the COVID issue, a lot of that had to be put on the back burner. And I do believe that those are two things that we can start looking at now with your support that will make a big difference and position us for success in the near future.
Thank you. We do have bills going through the Senate right now that puts quite a bit of money into the teachers decompression. I think it's 94 million or something like that. And one of the other things that you may or may not know is part of the issue, I think, is that the classifications for teachers has been in statute and they're the only public union. So when they reach the top, there's no more movement. So we have in that same bill asked that the statute be removed, with the classifications in it, and they just negotiate like other unions, and they have agreed to do that this time. So hopefully that will help. And we do have other funding for the differentials for the hard to fill areas. And hopefully that will help. But I do agree with you that during the pandemic, we lost a lot of great teachers. We lost a lot of tenured teachers, mainly because a lot of them were not comfortable with doing virtual teaching, et cetera. And I think that was someplace where the department fell short in not being able to train our teachers or provide them with, even students in high school who could. My middle school grandkids can operate my phone better than I can. And when I have problems, I just hand it to them and they'll fix it. So, I think those were the places that we could have done a better job. So I hear what you're saying. In the questionnaire, I asked about the DOE strategic plan, which the DOE currently does not have. Do you believe 5 education achievement markers that should be part of the next strategic plan are academic achievement, social emotional intelligence, readiness for the next level, ability to overcome and adapt to difficult situations, and contributions to the community? How do you see these 5 achievement markers being integrated into a strategic plan?
So I think really although they're 5, they have to be integrated together. I think for me, one of the biggest things that I see a lack of nowadays is giving our students the opportunity to awamo kuleana, giving them the opportunity to take on responsibilities to contribute back to the communities, thus giving relevance to the education that they have. Why am I learning these things? What am I going to do? Oftentimes we hear that, well, you go get an advanced degree, you can make $1 million somewhere, and that's success. And that is one measure of success. But what about our students that maybe not making $1 million, but they're contributing positively to their communities? They're helping others in their communities to elevate themselves and thus elevate our communities as a whole. So I think in any strategic planning, it's not just about the great parts that we put together, but the integration of these different parts. And I think that in itself is key. Those 5 areas, as well as others that will be definitely brought to a strategic planning process, but really making the parts work as a whole is what I think is really necessary to accomplish that.
Thank you. And my final question is, how quickly do you believe that the board needs to engage with the new superintendent to build this strategic plan?
I would say as quickly as possible. I think a lot of it depends on who this new superintendent is and how they work. Some people like to get a good lay of the land, a good understanding. Some people have plans that are, your first 100 days, your first 30 days, your first 60 days. I believe as soon as the superintendent has a good grasp of the situation and an understanding, and has talked to enough, has engaged enough with you folks, with our legislators, our communities, our staff, and have that understanding and ready, that is when it'd be appropriate to start this or start engaging in the strategic planning process. The sooner the better is what I would hope for it to be.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? Senator Kim.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry I didn't get to meet with you ahead of time. I did meet with all the others, so I'm going to ask you the questions I probably would have asked you. We met earlier. You talked just now about the education achievement markers and about the strategic plan, and part of that is social intelligence, emotional intelligence, readiness for the next level. And I don't necessarily think we have to have a strategic plan to be able to integrate that into our schools. Have you, being on the board, noticed or realized that students are lacking in being socially adept and being ready for the world, whether they go to college or not, that they can interview, that they are they have social skills, that they can balance a checkbook, that they have financial literacy. Having been on the board, have you any thoughts about that? And have you folks discussed that? Have it been something that you folks have been prioritizing?
So I do have some context and some understanding of that, but not so much from meetings in the boardroom, more so from meeting with our students in their schools, meeting in the community forums and listening, listening to our principals, listening to our CASs, listening to our teachers, and really understanding what the readiness factor is for the youth, for the children. No, I don't think we need to have a strategic plan to start that. I think it should be core to what we do, but I do believe that it should be accounted for in a strategic plan. Like I mentioned earlier, I think all the different parts of a strategic plan need to work together and need to be really considered and understood that it's the parts that make the whole. Hawaii is such an interdependent place. Oftentimes we hear the ideals in America of being independent, right? But growing up here in Hawaii, I understand that it's really about caring for each other, about that interdependence. So being able to give our students the opportunity, like I mentioned before, to Awamo Kuleana, to take on some of these responsibilities, I think that's part of the socio-emotional learning that's really important, because they start to feel value. We don't need a strategic plan specifically to make that happen. That can, and I've seen some great examples of it already happening in schools. I'm a proud graduate of Waiakea High School, and I will admit that I wasn't probably the best student there. But I'm the oldest in my family, and I had to make my way and learn. Going back and visiting that school, they had their ambassadors that took us around and shared, and it was really beautiful. But then I went walking around afterwards to observe those that weren't given that responsibility, and I still saw a lot of promise. And so it's super important, but giving the students this opportunity to grow into that and guide them into a social and emotional well-being is super important.
So what have the board done? I mean, have you folks mandate anything to the superintendent or to the schools in this area? Or, I mean, it's one thing to talk about and say how important it is, but I mean, we've had bills to include financial literacy in the curriculum. So why do we need a law? Why do we need a bill? If that's so important, then why isn't it part of the curriculum, the normal curriculum, not an elective, but part of the everyday, and teaching it from a young age as they grow? So is the board aware of some of the measures that going through where, we really don't need a law? You folks can effectuate those important areas.
I agree. I myself am not fully aware. We do have a great a team that is following bills in the ledge that does keep us informed. To be honest, I don't know that we've addressed that specifically, that specific issue around the financial literacy and check writing.
So are you aware that it's only an elective in some schools, and some schools don't even have it? Are you aware of that?
That's my understanding.
So is that acceptable?
I think we can definitely improve. I think it needs to be improved.
Okay, so I guess that's what I'm driving at. You've been on the board, and you're going to be on, and so I'm hoping that there's some proactivity in these areas of importance, and not wait for a strategic plan, not wait for the legislature to pass a law, but that you folks are going to be proactive in making sure that this becomes part of the curriculum, so that our students are ready. And I've shared this with the other nominees, but I sit on the WICHE board, and one of the areas in which we all agree is that our students across the nation coming out of high school lacking social skills, lacking skills to interview for jobs, and lacking financial literacy. They cannot count change back. They can't do some basic things. And one of the things we talked about was that colleges maybe should be providing some of these programs and these courses at the college level, which really worries me because we're going to be teaching basic things that should be taught at the high school and intermediate school. And yet we're going to saddle our students with student debt at the college level for these basic courses that they should have already under their belts. And so I think that's an area that's really lacking. And I'd love to see that the Board of Education take a stronger role in talking and working with the superintendent and the area superintendents into looking at how do we implement these things now and not wait for a law and not wait for us to change that. The other area, I noticed that you're on the Human Resources Committee. Is that correct? Are you familiar with the overpayments?
Overpayment.
Where the state overpays teachers because they don't have, they get all of their sick leave and all of the vacation up front. And so some of them use it up before the 6 months, and they use it up and then they go on vacation or they go on sick leave, and because it's automatic payroll, they get paid and they end up owing us because we overpaid them. They didn't have vacation, they didn't have sick leave. And it's thousands of dollars. In fact, there's a point where if you add it all up, DOE is one of the largest violators of that, of millions of dollars. And half of that is uncollectible because teachers either quit or leave the system. And so that, and every year after year, we've been after DOE to do a better collection, a better way of making sure that teachers who do not have sick leave or vacation left, that they go on the manual system of reporting their pay so that they're not overpaid. Because when they're overpaid, then they take a long time to pay it back. The law says we can take it a percentage, but the unions, fight it, and the people who got it fight it. But if we underpay anybody, boy, we better make sure we make that whole the very next month or the very next week. But we overpay, and these are thousands and thousands of dollars. Some teachers or personnel have gotten overpayments and then will pay $25 a month and take forever, and then they leave the system and you can't collect it. And this is money that could be used in our classrooms. It could be used for our teachers. So you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware of it, but mahalo for bringing it to my attention. I'll make sure that our committee does take that issue up.
Because I bring that up every year. I talk about it in meetings. I talk about it with DOE, talk to the governor's office. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a number of years. So I hope that you guys become aware of this and that more effort is done in being able to do something about it, to collect it. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm on kind of going back off of what Senator Kim was saying. And first off, mahalo for taking the leap and continuing on, hopefully, on the board for another term. And I think, I'm a big advocate of yours and know you do good work in the community, and hopefully continue to do good work advocating for our kids now and into the future. But going off of what Senator Kim says, we have bills coming through the ledge every year. And the department always says we can do that ourselves. We can do that ourselves. We don't need a law, but we keep on providing these laws, like whether it's financial literacy or other types of things that we feel as a legislature are important for our kids. So one of your responses, not really a response to that, but in terms of BOE has an absolute expectation to advocate for needed resources, you noted that it was readily apparent that our lawmakers need more confidence and clarity that the resources already allocated are being utilized appropriately and effectively by the department before we can request additional resources. So how do you balance, the expectations of the legislature and in relation to the needs of the students in the schools and the BOE and or the department, in terms of like us requesting stuff, our expectations and then your expectations?
I really look forward to the new superintendent coming in and really level setting that we have great communication between the superintendent, the board, and the legislature. We've heard over and over how your case in point, Senator Kim, with this area that I was not aware of, but I should have been, that there are inefficiencies that need to be taken into account of. We will need significant resources in the near future, especially to combat learning loss and to, create a better system for our students. But we hear you. I hear you that there's inefficiencies that we need to address first. So my response was such because I understand. And my hope is that we can work with the new superintendent, not my hope, my expectation is that we will work with the new superintendent, whoever that may be, to create the systems of accountability, to understand how to create efficiencies so that when we come to you folks with a request, it's clear, it's concise, you have confidence that it's needed and that we've already looked elsewhere and we couldn't find it elsewhere, that we've come to you. So that's what I expect to happen with our next superintendent.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you. And by the way, I had an opportunity to visit your alma mater, Hawai'i, last month, and I agree. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet with the students, and even those that were not part of the committee were very pleasant and, said aloha and greeted us as we walked by. It's very, very nice. Good experience. So thank you.
Mahalo.
Okay. Without further questions, our next GM 804, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Education gubernatorial nominee Bruce Voss for a term to expire June 30th, 2025. And to testify, we have Susan Bucola Davis. Susan, please.
Aloha. It's my pleasure to testify for Bruce and an extension, confirmation for a second term. He is an active board member. His strong knowledge of finance added substance to the Finance Committee meetings. In his capacity of chairman of the Finance Committee, he adds insight into the department's presentations on budget. For the board to be accountable, there needs to be a robust Finance Committee led by a leader with integrity and standards. He openly listens. He listens to testifiers when they testify orally. He reads the written testimonies. He challenges when necessary and adds clarity to the confusion. He actively participates in all meetings. I truly believe that this is a very necessary second term, that we keep Bruce, because there will not be continuity, and his expertise in finances brings a lot to the table, whether it's in a finance committee or even at the board once the finance committee has met and then the general business meeting occurs. He provides a lot of insight for those that.
Thank you, Susan. Your time is up. Also to testify live in person, Sherry Nakamura for Hawai'i Coalition.
Aloha again, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and members of the committee. Sherry Nakamura, Director of Hawai'i Coalition. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of the nomination of Bruce Voss for another term on the Board of Education. One of Hawaii's biggest priorities is equity in education and looking out for our struggling students. Bruce is a strong advocate for these students, and in his interactions with DOE, makes sure that they are being addressed. Coherence, transparency, and accountability is the coalition's second biggest priority. We have been extremely thankful to Bruce for asking the DOE tough questions to get clarity on things like how the CARES and ESSER funds are being spent, how our CIP funds are being spent, and what the DOE is doing to make processes and operations more efficient so that we can get to the outcomes we desire. We look forward to working with Bruce, and we urge the committee to support his nomination. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Sherry. There's also a written testimony in support from David Miyashiro of Hawaii Kids Can. Bruce, please. Go ahead and make an opening statement.
Aloha, Chair Kidani and members of the committee. Thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon. When the governor asked me to consider what would be actually my third term, I thought back to the words of my father, who was a math teacher at Kailua Intermediate for almost 3 decades. And my father was a great teacher, but he was a taskmaster. And my father would always say to his kids, us, and to his students, a job half done is a job not done at all. And at the Board of Education and the Department of Education, the job is not done. The pandemic has caused great harm to our students, particularly our English learners and our financially disadvantaged students, both in their learning and their social emotional well-being. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work. And if confirmed by the Senate, I would like to support the new superintendent, whoever that is, and her or his team to do the work necessary to get our students back to where they should be, where they must be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Members, questions before I start on mine?
Because I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave for another meeting. But, and I know we met and I asked you a lot of questions already.
It's okay, ask away, Senator.
No, I was just reading your response and you talked about the CIP prioritizations, one of the things that you pushed through and that you're
Yes,
proud
ma'am.
of doing. And I commend you for that. Every year, however, it seems as though the legislators of the area have CIP requests for their schools, which seems to be not on the priority list or very low ranked on the list of CIPs that the DOE decides they want to do. And so how do we reconcile that? And, you know, I know some of the older schools like Farrington High School, which we are both alumni. I mean, that campus is very old. Both Senator Kidani and myself, there are buildings there that was there when we were there. And their master plan is really, it's taken a long, long time. And a lot of the students across the island from other areas, and if Senator Favela was here, probably would jump in. And they're very envious of all the new schools and all the latest technologies at the schools and, you know, the wonderful facilities. And some of the old schools are you know, really bad. Luckily for Farrington, we fought really hard to get the field and the new stadium area. You can see it from the freeway and everybody's very envious of Farrington, but they don't see the empty pool that's been deteriorating. They don't see the gym that's terrible. I mean, there's all this stuff that's going on the campus. So how do the board help to reconcile some of these
No,
needs?
it's a great question, Senator. And if I may briefly, you know, we're all shaped by our personal background. So briefly, I want to tell you how I came to this. I graduated from Kalaheo High School and I was 6 years there. I was there in the 70s when it transitioned from an intermediate school to a high school. And as you may recall, if you were around at the time, that area of Kailua was represented by people who were unfortunately not influential in the legislature. And so this actually happened in the late 1970s when it came time to paint Kalaheo High School. The only thing we had, they took all the leftover paint from the elementary schools, the purple paint, the green paint, the red paint, and that's how they painted Kalaheo High School. And we laughed about it, we joked about it, but it really did make all of us feel kind of like second-class citizens. This paint didn't hurt anything, but that always stuck with me, you know? And then I look at places like, and I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, Farrington is one of them, Nanakuli, Kaimuki High School, King Intermediate School, some of the neighbor islands, you know, Waimea on the Big Island, Ka'u, some of those places. In my view, it's just not fair. I don't want any kid to ever feel second class in a learning environment. So to answer your question, it has to be a balance. As long as I have been paying attention to legislators, legislators will advocate for their districts, and they should. And we have gotten some terrific schools as a result of that, and some money that you wouldn't already have gotten. My wife teaches at Waterloo High School, and I'm grateful to the legislature for all they've done for that. But we cannot let the schools that have fallen into disrepair, like Kaimuki High School, go the way they're going, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, Senator. If we don't improve those schools, the parents don't want to send their kids, and it dwindles down to nothing. So the department has to work with the legislators on their priorities, incorporate those into the policy which commands socioeconomic equity, and come up with a list that is public, that's part of the conversation, so that when the legislators go to fund the CIP projects during the session, they have a list, they can talk to the people at the department and facilities, and that's going to be a key part of the superintendent's team, and try to find that balance so that they can advocate for their districts, but that these students don't get left behind in second class. So that's, I often talk about balance, but this is an area where balance is definitely needed.
Well, let me just share you a story about the field at Farrington. And so while we put in the money, they did up the contracts, because they ran out of money or the bids came in a certain amount, they cut out the lights for the field. Okay, so we're going to have a football field with no lights. And so the principal came to see me, and the counselors came to see me, the coaches came to see me, and they said, we're not going to be able to play games at night. We don't have the lights. And then I was told, and I said, okay, well, we'll put the money in the budget. And they said, the contract says if you don't do it by the time the contract begins, you cannot add the lights. And if you go back in later and dig up the field, you're going to have what happened at Castle and some of the bad things that went on. And so we pushed for that. I ended up talking with the chair of the Board of Education. He found money in an account that DOE has for when they have extra monies from a contract, additional monies, I guess it's a fund. Found the money, we put it in. But if we didn't get involved, we would have a field today at Farrington with no lights. And then the same thing happened again when they were finishing up the field. They didn't have money for the visiting bleachers and a bathroom, and we had to go and find the money again. And same thing, I think it came out of that fund, right, Senator?
Yeah.
But again, I mean, how do we get?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
ahead.
Senator. There's sort of two parts to that question. The answer is. First is on the project management, because what you're describing, at least in part, is a project management failure. And we just learned this. I had the facilities people come, and it's not their fault, but I don't know if you know this, there are almost 100 positions vacant now within facilities development and facilities management. And they have ideas, Mr. Tanaka, in terms of mentorship and bringing people in, but it's a huge gap there. We need to get that department fully staffed with experienced people. And frankly, if we need to pay market rates for that, we need to do that. We need to get those people. Second, whether it is, lights at Farrington or any of the other many issues, I would encourage, whether it's lawmakers or whatever, to communicate to the board. I was telling this to Senator Kidani when I met with her. People call me all the time, and a lot of times they're yelling at me, about things that the department does it not doing. And people yell at you all the time. But you know what? That's how I learn things, and I particularly love it when parents call and yell at me, because I learn stuff about what's happening in the schools. And so that's the kind of relationship that I hope the board and the department can have with the legislature going forward. I mean, what you folks have done or hopefully about to do with the teacher differentials and the compression issue, that's a wonderful message. And I hope that's the beginning of kind of a little bit of a new relationship where we can talk openly. And if where the department or the board screws up, which we will, on stuff like the lights at Farrington, we can do what's necessary to fix it and fix it now.
I appreciate your response. And like I said, we did go to Don Horner, who was the chair of the board at the time, and he did find the money. So I did have that relationship with him, and we were able to do that. So this is my last statement I'm going to make before I go. The Kihei School being done on Maui. And I know that DOE may have had resistance to it. But my understanding is that school's going to cost us in excess of $300 million to build a school, which to me is crazy because we have so many schools that could use some of that money to be upgraded. And yet we're spending that money because of the rock, because they were told that this is not a good area to build a school, but we went ahead and built it anyway. And it's costing more and more as the days go by. And it's such a waste that we do stuff like that because, again, the money could be used at other schools.
Absolutely. And I know it's expensive. I haven't heard the $300 million number, but it wouldn't surprise me given the site constraints there on Maui, the traffic. As you know, the Land Use Commission had its own, view on that. And no doubt we need to do a better job. The board needs to do a better job. The department needs to do a better job of spending that money sufficiently. To their credit, and I do want to defend the department here, some of the procedures they put in place, particularly for the repair and maintenance project, and there's been some innovative projects, that's better. And those are being done more efficiently. And one of the things that we need to do is scale those processes up, take those ideas to the larger CIP projects. Now, remember, some of that's going to be taken over by the School Facilities Agency. But the School Facilities Agency needs to hire its good people, take the priority lists, take the ideas, and begin to develop projects more efficiently. Agreed, Senator.
And I'll admit, part of that problem is the legislators get involved and we kind of mandate and say, this is where we want it. But I think that in some cases, the board has to stand up to the legislature and say, this doesn't make sense. If you put it there, it's going to cost us amount and it's going to take off for other schools. And, because we're not the experts. We rely on you guys to be the experts to tell us. And when you guys don't, then we'll dream it up.
Understood.
We'll dream it up. I mean, that's our role, right? To try to put something there.
I mean, in fairness to the legislators, and I am very familiar with the background of Kihei School. That's a burgeoning area. A school needed an active legislator, and good for them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're representing their constituents. So I'm the last person to criticize them. But you're right. Cost control has to be a factor.
That has to be a factor. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. On that note, the School Facilities Agency bill was passed almost 3 years ago, I think, and unfortunately, it took a while for the governor to name the executive director, who has been named, Keanu Furious from the Big Island. But I think the problem that was just discussed can somewhat be resolved with the School Facilities Agency to give us some information and for the board to get involved too as to what you guys are hearing and agree. The 300 million price tag is because it is Blue Rock. The land should never have been purchased by the state. It was purchased quite a number of years ago. The other issue with that now, and which is going to make it even more expensive, and the board might want to weigh in on this, is the community wants an underpass under the freeway, which is going to cost a lot of money. And I want to weigh in by saying this. Nolani High School was built with an underpass of Camp Highway. The underpass gave them nothing but problems for years. The kids would go there and smoke after school, fight, whatever it was. And now the homeless were in it. They finally closed it. They closed it up. It's not usable. So what the intention was good, but that's not, in today's world, not how it's going to be used. So I think the board should look at that and maybe weigh in with the department. I don't know where we are, and something that we might want to look at further. I don't know if the money is in this budget now to do that or not. So I can understand why the School Facilities Agency was needed. And again, we did pass it a while ago, but things sometimes moves too slowly here. But I look forward for the board's input in some of these projects, and hopefully the School Facilities Agency will take the lead and let us know through the department where the facilities are needed, and not so much the legislators weighing in and saying, this is, what we want in our district.
Right.
Because while it's good to have, it's not always should be first on the list.
And that's why, at least I hope, in some small way, the board policy that Ken Uemura and I put together will help, because when the department side, the priorities, this for decades have been kind of a black box. Nobody knows what's on the list or where it is and how it gets shifted. And if that list is made public and is part of the overall conversation, including with the legislators, then we can get not just better projects, but hopefully more efficiently, cost-efficient projects. And thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, I wanted to ask you what the board's timeline is to name the new superintendent. We've had a couple delays and the board has moved it back,
Yes.
and it's not doing anyone any good to, wonder when this process is going to end, and so that we can, get down to business, finish the strat plan. It would have been nice to have more input on the budget. I mean, don't get me wrong, interim superintendent Hayashi has been very rigorous in spending time with us. He's kept us here asking questions many nights, but I do appreciate his willingness to learn, but we need to make sure that we don't delay it any further so that we can get down to business and start.
Agreed. And you just mentioned intentions, and what's the old line? I'll paraphrase it. The road to heck is paved with good intentions. In terms of the amount of time it's taken, there was a couple factors that the board considered. One was it wanted to get the input of, the community advisory committees and the superintendent. It wanted to cast the broadest net, for candidates so that we could see everyone who was interested in the job, who's qualified. And third, rightly or wrongly, the decision was made, it probably wouldn't be a good idea to change in the middle of the school year. All that being said, I agree with you. It probably has gone on a little longer than ideally it should. And so to answer your question specifically, there will be a committee meeting in the first week of May to approve essentially some processes. And then on May, I believe it's 19th, the finalists that are selected by the committee, the search committee, which has done an enormous amount of work, will be interviewed by the full board. And it is the expectation that at or about that day, assuming that the candidates are acceptable to the board, that a new superintendent will be selected, I hope. So certainly by
So a month from now,
a month from now. And, and I do commend interim superintendent Hayashi for his patience, and his commitment to the students and his commitment to keeping the schools open. He was put in a difficult, if not impossible situation. And, I think the schools benefited from, what he's done in that extremely difficult situation.
yeah, I think it was a difficult and impossible situation
Yes.
myself to not
Yes.
have a strat plan. You can't hire or fire, so you have the same people that you're working with, whether, good or bad, that's, whatever.
Right. And that, you're 100% right on that. And that's whoever the new superintendent is, that's job one, is to assemble his or her team, right? A team that is, got not just the experience, but has the ability, as Ms. Nakamura likes to say, to develop the internal processes necessary to change the mindset within the department, that we're here to support the schools. That's what we do. And is willing to accept new procedures, new ideas. And it's a difficult thing. It really is. You mentioned the strategic plan, and we need to get on that. But the very first thing the board needs to do with a new superintendent is help her or him develop the kind of team that's necessary to drive this forward and remediate the learning loss.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate your willingness to continue to serve, Bruce.
Thank you.
You've been a great asset to the board. Appreciate
you.
it. Further questions?
I'll just do a quick one, if I can, Madam Chair. Hello, Bruce. Just real
Thanks, sir.
quick, just going off of one of your statements you made, you spoke about the trauma, of the kids' mental health and coming back to school, how that's all going to all play out. And really, you felt strongly developing better metrics to address the students' social, emotional well-being. And you said it's going to take time, obviously, to get a a better understanding of what really is going on. And there was an upfront, an upfront, I guess, data collection at first at handle, but it didn't fully encompass what you thought, which I feel exactly the same way. But how do you see the board helping the department accomplish this in getting better data collection, not only for a lot of this types of stuff, but obviously throughout a lot of the other things you spoke about in your responses, better data collection to better handle how we move forward in the future?
So the data tool that was used by the department and used by a lot of school districts, is the Panorama tool that's given to the students. And again, I just know from talking to teachers, my own wife was a teacher at Monolo High School, that not that the students didn't take that seriously, they did, as they do all testing there, but it didn't encompass everything of what they were feeling. And in particular, I mean the sense of disconnectedness and disengagement that students felt, that from a learning and participation, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. And that has created all kinds of disruptive and unproductive behavior. So as I mentioned, there are tools, that the National Association's Board of Education advocates. There's other ones that I know that are available. And it's a two-pronged process. We need to work with the department to find the proper tools, have the students, provide the data, and then work with the department with regular reporting on programs, that can address this. As Kaimana said, and I'm so happy that he's staying on the board because he's such a great asset. A lot of this is peer driven, right? Peer groups and the kinds of opportunities to participate in peer activities that just simply haven't been there the last 2 years. We have plenty of money. We have the ESSER funds. The complex areas are directing those. The board needs to put all that together, require regular reporting by the department and the complex area superintendents, and make sure that money is available even for small things at the schools, high schools, intermediate schools, programs, activities, nights, food for students. You wouldn't believe, Senator, what a big deal it is just to provide snacks for students, to keep them there learning. All that kind of stuff we need to pay attention to and make sure is being done. And that the public can learn about and offer its ideas, because, we've heard some of them today. The public has great ideas. And over the last couple of years, the department, arguably hasn't listened to all those ideas. And I want us as the board, I want the department to listen to those ideas to help those students in their social emotional learning.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much,
Thank you, Senator.
Bruce. Appreciate it. Moving along. GM 802, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Education gubernatorial nominee Nicole McClellan for a term to expire 6/30/2025. To testify, Susan Piccola Davis, please.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thanks for hanging in there, Susan.
It's like a board of education, board meeting. It's going to last all day, right?
I hope not.
So Nicole, aloha, and get ready for your opportunity to participate in making our public schools great public schools for all of Hawaii's keiki. Be prepared for long hours. Prior to every meeting, you will need to put aside some personal time to read the minutes and all the written testimonies. During the meetings, you will be actively listening to oral testimonies from your constituents. It is important to know that your board membership comes with high expectations from the public. Part of this includes holding the Department of Education accountable. Be ready to ask questions for clarity from all presenters on the agenda. It is a very important job you are undertaking with its ups and downs. Thank you for accepting the nomination. I noticed in your resume that you have qualities that the board would definitely benefit from.
Thank you, Susan. Your time is up. Sorry. Next to testify, Rick Agid, President, Waikiki Improvement Association. Not here. In support. Also, Ivan Louis Kwan. Is Ivan here? In support. And a bunch of testimonies received, all in support. Makana. Thank you for joining us. Please make your opening statement.
Aloha Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and honorable members of the Senate Committee on Education. It is an honor to be here today before you seeking confirmation of my nomination to the Hawaii State Board of Education. This is a tremendous responsibility that, if confirmed, I will take very seriously. I have had the pleasure of connecting with each of you and your office staff over the past weeks, as well as a number of your colleagues in the Senate, and I found our conversations to be insightful and productive. I'd like to mahalo you all for sharing your most precious resource with me, your time, as well as the colleagues and friends of mine who took the time to support me in this endeavor. I'm grateful for all that this body has done and continues to do for our keiki. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard before you today, and I humbly ask for your support in this nomination to the Board of Education. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Makana. I hope Susan Picola Davis didn't scare you off.
She did not.
But it is true, the board meetings have been very lengthy, but look, Kaimana and Bruce are back. So it can't be all that bad. I mean, it's a tremendous responsibility to sit on the board. As legislators and on this committee, we feel that tremendous, I'm not going to call it a burden, responsibility. And so we're very happy when new faces, come up and are willing to take up the mantle and serve our students, our community. And thank you for coming to sit with me and talk story. And I'll ask a few questions for the general public also, because I actually have gone over these things with you already. But in your response, you talk about needing clear metrics to determine success for the Department of Education. What are some key metrics or indicators you would like the DOE to use to measure and evaluate student success?
I think many of the other Akamai folk before me had a lot of mana'o that I think is of value, Kaimana's 5 sort of metrics, if you will. But I think if I could, Chair Kidani, expound, I think one of the things when we think through strategic planning and metrics is really looking at the indicators that were already set in the 2017 through 2020 plan and ensuring that we have some accountability in those. Look at areas of opportunity for growth and improvement, because as I understand it, really with the exception of 2, many of them fell short in terms of success on those indicators. So I would look at doing a deeper dive on how we can improve that as we move forward into strategic planning for the future for our keiki. But I think in general, the indicators that have already been laid out in the plan are spot on.
Thank you. So in your response, the written response to the committee, you talk about the need for targeted and equitable programming to fill the gaps. What gaps do you believe exist in the DOE now, and what proposals do you have to fill those gaps?
I think access is a big thing, equity and access. When you're considering public schools, it is a deep passion of mine to ensure access. It's something that we deal with in the healthcare sector. And I do see, as I've shared with you and others, lots of synergies between healthcare and education when we're considering the well-being of families and keiki. And so I do think looking for ways to bridge gaps in terms of access needs to be something that the BOE and the DOE partner together, hopefully with the legislature as well. But developing programs and strategies around identifying those gaps and ways to develop partnerships to address it is a passion of mine.
Thank you for that. I appreciated your response that you highlighted increasing workforce development opportunities in the healthcare field for our students. How do you see the board helping build these partnerships and workforce pathways with the DOE and private sector partners?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I think again, folks before me that are Akamai have shared, I definitely believe that there's an appetite in the business community, both for-profit and nonprofit, to better partner with Keiki, to ensure a better bridge between education and career readiness. So I think, again, not to double down on the point, but I do think that there's opportunity for the BOE to consider creative and innovative solutions, or to build upon the successes that many other BOE members have begun in terms of developing pathways. There are lots of private schools that have begun pathway programs for Keiki, and some DOE schools that have done a phenomenal job as well. For consideration, I'd only be looking at ways to expand that opportunity as appropriate, and notably, I would be one to advocate for those opportunities to the underserved Keiki.
Thank you for that. I think the legislature has been a strong proponent of these pathways, even our career technical education, our alternative learning centers. And, you know, as many of you have talked about students' needs, we also know that not every student can sit in the classroom for 6 hours a day and you know, learn. And so there are other ways that we're looking at to, you know, to make sure that they have the education and skills they need to move forward in life. I think pathways are an excellent example of how they can do this. And there are several schools in the state that are doing, we saw when we visited the Big Island, one pathway where they were teaching the students how to be surveyors. And it was so excellent. I was just so amazed. We have at Waipahu High School, they have a health academy. And I was kind of blown away a couple of years ago when First Lady Biden was here to push for vaccinations. Hawaii Pacific Health rolled up in their brand new bus that was suited for the vaccination purposes. And every employee on the bus that was doing vaccinations were graduates of Waipahu High School the year before, hired by Hawaii Pacific Health and earning a decent wage. And the assistants on the bus that came onto the bus were the students that were currently at Waipahu High School in the health pathway. And this is, you know, how it's meant to work. And I think the ideas that our educators are bringing to the table with the help of the Board of Education is significant, because I think, you know, in the days that when we went to school, we did have what is now called pathways. We had auto body shops and, you know, sheet metal, woodworks and whatever, which, you know, for a long time they stopped. But we know that our local community has a hard time finding, you know, employees to fill these jobs. And I've known that some of the auto body shops have to, you know, bring people from the mainland because they don't have workers here who know how to do that. And so we need to find out what the community and what the businesses in our community need, and to be able to help them, you know, fill those needs through our student population. So I appreciate your willingness to sit on the board. And yes, it is hard work, but it's interesting, and you will be part of guiding the lives of future students. And I think that should give you great satisfaction. And I am very thankful that you're willing to serve. Members, any questions?
Just one real quick, Madam Chair. Hello, Makana. And again, not only to you, but to the rest who have reached out and asked for meetings prior to this hearing. You know, I appreciate that. And it really goes a long way to know that you guys are, you know, willing to reach out and have build those relationships with each and every one of us, especially on this committee, to better get to know you and better see how you would be on the board and serve on the board. So I appreciate that, even though I wasn't able to meet. I know most of you've tried multiple times, but I do appreciate that. My whole thing is, and I know Kaimana's a huge advocate. I know our neighbor island members are huge advocate for the neighbor islands and the rural communities. And I know Oahu has extremely diverse communities as well that are represented over here. And in one of your responses, you said that, we can't bring a one-size-fits-all type of approach to supporting our kids, teachers, and schools. We need targeted and equitable programming that actually fills those gaps. Like, how do you, see yourself being on the board, working with other members from the neighbor islands or representing the rural communities? How do you see yourself being able to understand and comprehend the complexities involved in, let's say the kids being taught in Ka'u, have very limited resources, extremely old facilities, 1880s, I think the school was originally built. So how do you see yourself like understanding those types of issues and being able to really look and say like, oh yeah, these are the types of things we need to look at, the one size doesn't fit all, right? That community needs something different than that community and than that community.
Thank you for your question, Senator Kanuha. I think I'm going to give you a simple response, but I will elaborate, so bear with me. I think simply put, it's really just about talking story and listening is really all that it is. It's making a commitment to lean on expertise either on the board or in those different underserved areas, which again, that's similar to others that currently sit on the board. That's a passion project of mine. I do strongly believe in the underserved communities and making sure that no child, as Bruce pointed out, feels like a second-class citizen simply because of circumstances that they had no power in choosing, right? So I think we do exist to serve all keiki. I think relationship building, asking the questions, having the conversation and listening allows us and affords us the ability to make good policies that to some degree tailor to different areas. And we all know this growing up in Hawaii. A solution on Oahu is not applicable on Hawai'i Island. And so we really do have to approach it that way. It's a statewide system, of course, but I think we do have to be mindful of all of the different nuances. Even on Oahu, Senator Kanuha, it's an island and different than the neighbor islands, but even on Oahu, different areas are far different than each other. So I think having that context and being mindful of when we create policies and when we affect change, that we understand impact beyond just our own ether. And that, to your point, I do think that's of value to ensure that what we're creating, we check those outcomes as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further questions?
Just a couple of things. First of all, thanks to come and share with me a little bit about yourself. And I just get one question. I know we talked about for the new school superintendent, and if you was on the board of the selection, we talked this about the process that they're doing now, and previously, and of course, I mean, personally, I don't agree in, we have a lot of talent here. Remember, I was reaching out and saying that to you. What you would do, or what you would recommend doing differently than the previous boards that have been selecting our superintendent over the years, that what you would bring to the table doing something different?
I thank you for the question, Senator Favela. I want to commend those that have been on the board prior to me. I don't think that is a small task by any measure.
Yes.
That effectively has impact on 170,000 keiki plus.
Yes.
So I don't envy them, however, yet here I am. So to answer your question, I don't know what I would have done differently in that setting because quite frankly, I wasn't there. But in terms of should I get confirmed and have the opportunity to select, I do believe, and I'll say this, Senator Favela, I do believe that as local people, we all have a collective kuleana to be a little bit better about, as a mother, let me answer it this way. As a mother, I tell my keiki all the time that you can do or be anything. I'm constantly telling that. I will admit to this body and others tuning in that I'm not the best at modeling that kind of behavior. I think there is something to be said about ensuring that when we have local, that we should promote local. And what I mean by that is we need to be better about modeling that behavior to keiki. We need to show an example to keiki that in positions of power, that they can achieve that. We can't tell keiki in school that they can, but we're constantly pulling from elsewhere. That doesn't comport with keiki. That aside, obviously qualifications is a baseline. And so you're qualified or you're not qualified for the job. But I think what I would say about the superintendent is that should I have the opportunity to select, I would consider looking at an individual's ability to understand the nuances. It goes back to Senator Kanuha's question. A one size fits all, and how do you really operate within Hawaii, which I think we can all agree is extremely unique. So I would be looking for someone who has the capacity to understand Hawaii for who we are, because it is an important position, and it's a complicated space that we live in, a beautiful but complicated space.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
willingness to
Chair.
serve. Appreciate it. Our next nominee, GM 803, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Education gubernatorial nominee Lauren Moriarty for a term to expire 6/30/2024. You can come forward, Lauren, but we do have some people waiting to testify, and I'm sorry that we have gone so long, but you're one of the testifiers, Manawai Peters, had to leave. She was testifying in support. Next is Susan Picola Davis. Susan, please. Susan's there.
Yes, I'm
Hi,
here.
Susan.
I'm
Go
still here. I'm not going to go through the same thing that I did with Makana, because I believe that what I've said fits for all of them, and it wasn't meant to scare them off. It was meant for them to understand that sometimes it's more than what you think. And I'm happy that 3 people are here today that will be joining the board. What I wanted to say, and I'm going to say it for Makana, I noticed that you had some great qualities: community building, internal and external communication. She launched the Queen's Facebook page. She just developed strategic plans and implemented them. And she oversaw hospital metrics to ensure alignment with hospital strategic goals. High qualities that our board needs. Lauren, she's community oriented. She has an ability to streamline. Thank you very much. And strategic vision. Again, all qualities that fit right in with what your position is on the board. Thank you for.
Thank you, Susan. Sorry to cut you off again. Next to testify, Diane Peters Nguyen.
Committee members, I'm Diane Peter. You have my testimony. I stand in strong support of the nomination of Lauren Moriarty to serve on the Board of Education. I would just maybe summarize and focus on the fact that as the first U.S. ambassador of Native Hawaiian ancestry, Lauren brings forth not only a very strong local perspective on educational systems, but also a global perspective. And I also just want to highlight her personal passion for education. So thank you very much for this opportunity to weigh in.
Thank you, Diane. And if they look alike, I believe they are sisters. It doesn't take away from any part of the testimony. Diana, if she looks familiar, happens to be the CEO of the American Red Cross Pacific Islands region. Also Rotary Club downtown. I'm Rotary Club Mililani Sunrise. Thank you. Okay, next to testify, Mana Moriarty.
Aloha, Chair Kidani, and
Aloha.
Senators Favela and Kanuha. I've known the nominee for as long as almost everybody in the room. She's my mom. I've learned a few things from a lifetime of observing mom. Mom's a big picture thinker, but she has a grasp of the details. She's willing to ask the tough questions in a respectful manner to get things done. Mom gives freely of her time and talent. Mom makes plans and follows through. Mom has given decades of her time where she volunteered to serve on the boards of institutions providing educational and extracurricular programs for thousands and thousands of kids. This was volunteer time while she was raising 2 children and in an award-winning career as a manager and a diplomat in the United States Foreign Service. Mom makes plans and follows through. When Mom retired from her Foreign Service career, she spent weeks in introspection, reflecting on what it was she was going to do with the next phase of her life. And she came to 2 conclusions. It would involve Hawaii, education, and she followed through. She had a 15-year plan 15 years ago, and that plan involved the Board of Education of the state of Hawaii. She committed and she followed through. Mahalo for your consideration. She's the right person for this job.
That's so amazing. I think this is the first time I've had a child testify for their parents.
I was on the school board in Beijing, and he got his degree, and they called me to the stage like, I think my son's degree in
Oh, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Moriarty. And thank you for your willingness to serve. Please go ahead and.
Aloha kako. I'd like first, as a citizen of Hawaii, to thank you, Madam Chair, members of this committee, for what you do to support education. Nothing is more important than educating our next generation. I'm also grateful to Governor Ige for having nominated me to serve on the Board of Education. I'm really excited. To that kuleana, I would bring my passionate conviction about the importance of education, experience in leading at strategic levels and in large organizations, and lessons learned from volunteer teaching and from service on nonprofit boards. I come from a family that long valued public service and education. My mother, who came from Ka'u, gave me the Hawaiian name Kahea Okekai. And I was called across the waters to serve for almost 3 decades as a U.S. ambassador and career diplomat. And I was called home again to serve. I served on the school board in Beijing, China, was dean at the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, and hold degrees from the University of Hawaii and a Master of Arts in Teaching from Chaminade. When my husband and I were diplomats in residence at the East-West Center, our children attended public school in Hawaii. I believe strongly that every child should have the opportunity for an excellent, free public school education. Our public school in Hawaii should be firmly rooted in the culture, history, values, and many strengths of our diverse people in society. At the same time, success in the 21st century requires appreciation and understanding of events and trends beyond our shores. If confirmed to serve on the Board of Education, I would listen to and seek wisdom from people with knowledge and experience. It's been really exciting to listen to this testimony today, both your questions, your depth of knowledge, and what I've learned just listening in a few minutes to those who've already served. I would weigh my decisions and actions against the standard of how will this benefit the students? Is this the best way to benefit the students? I would work hard to serve Hawaii in a pono way. Meka ha'aha. I ask that you confirm me to serve as a member of the Board of Education. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you very much for your willingness to serve. Ambassador, in your response to the committee, you talk about how numbers themselves cannot tell the whole story while acknowledging that benchmarks are still important to assess progress. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by this and how you would evaluate the success of the DOE?
So one of my practices has always been, when I have to make a decision, to seek the best possible data to help to assess costs, to help to assess options. But numbers can't tell the whole story. Yes, we can use them both to tell objective facts. We can also use them to get an idea of perceptions, but they can't tell the whole story. So one of the things I always like to know is what's behind the numbers. Like, what was the actual survey question? So we can get an idea of, well, did that perhaps skew in some sense the numbers we're getting? I believe, though, it is important to have numbers, whatever data we can have, because it can help us to spot trends, see outliers, and then ask additional questions to try to understand what lies behind the numbers that we do have, perhaps to seek more data or better explanations. It can also help us to look at what's happening elsewhere and understand, is there something we can learn from there or they can learn from us? Obviously, each situation is different. With respect specifically to education numbers, some of them are, maybe easier to know. Do kids go to school? I was a student teaching at Castle, 9th grade social studies, and we lost kids in the 9th grade who stopped coming to school. That's an important statistic. If they're not coming to school, it's telling us something, but we would need to know what's behind it and why they're not coming. Teachers, a lot of discussion here today about teachers. So are teachers ready to teach? Can we recruit them and retrain them, but are they ready to teach in the ways that we need for the going forward? So those are basic kinds of things. Some of the things I'm most interested in and have tried to do some research on are hard to measure. Things like grit, perseverance, ability to overcome difficulty. Those are hard to measure. I think we're just now starting to see more research coming in from that. And some of the research that'll be available as we see the results of COVID, the way different jurisdictions have reacted to COVID may give us insights into what worked in some places, and then we can figure out whether there's anything we can learn from what others have learned. So it's a kind of long answer. And I think the bottom line in terms of exactly what I would want to see is if I were confirmed for the Board of Education, would specifically depend on the kinds of issues that the board as a whole, working with the DOE, decides are the things that the strategic plan needs to focus on.
Thank you for that. You also noted that the responsibility of the Board of Education extends beyond just the DOE system to include the Charter Commission and the public library system.
Yes.
If confirmed to the board, how do you anticipate interacting with the Charter Commission and the state librarian?
Well, of course, I'd be guided also by the experience of those who've come before me and would help me to understand the important issues. But the first thing I'd want to do is go meet them, talk to them, see what's important to them, what they're concerned about, what keeps them awake at night, what opportunities they see. And then I'd want to talk to the people who use what they offer or could be using what they offer to try to understand those perspectives as well. And finally, I'd want to understand both the history here. I'm sure there's good research. I hear we have a great research department in the Board of Education, but also what have been experiences elsewhere with similar types of commissions. I don't understand, though, of course, that, for example, on the Public Charter Commission, our state is way ahead most of the rest of the country in how public charter schools have really taken off and become an integral part of our education system.
What a novel idea, talking to people. You prioritize the formation of a new strategic plan as something the board must take up immediately. What kinds of metrics or data would you like to see to be part of that strategic plan?
I would prioritize that. I think that once you have a strategic plan in place, it makes other decisions easier. The exact metrics that would be used, though, I think need to reflect what is in the strategic plan. No point just collecting data to collect data for me to suggest something. But I would want to collect data against whatever the strategic targets are within that plan.
Thank you for that. Very good. Members, further questions?
You did a good job. Like your answers. Wow. President. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Senator Hanua.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Aloha, and thanks for being here. And first of all, I think every individual here is fantastic, and it's great to see the passion in each and every one of you. And just looking at your impressive resume, it's just, I don't even know if I'm over here, but I had one question. I know you spoke about earlier that you like to build upon your own expertise in formulating policies that recruit, develop, empower, and retain effective teachers, as well as expertise in assessment. Can you explain some of those policies you think you've gained and learned throughout the years to help recruit, develop, empower, and retain effective teachers?
Thank you for the question. Research has shown that one of the most important factors to student success is having an effective teacher. And when I think back as to what made a difference for me when I really wanted to learn things, it was often having a teacher who was passionate and knew both how to interest me and also to teach me. So I think teachers are absolutely critical and really, really important to learning. One of the things that you see, I don't know if you've heard of Shanti Niketan in India. I mean, that teacher teaches underneath a peepal tree, but it's recognized as among the best schools in the world because it's the teachers and the students who are working together. So when I look around the world, I see the importance of effective teachers. I also see, for example, in a lot of other societies, they pay the teachers like you pay doctors. And the teachers get the kind of respect that you would give to what we think of as these type of professionals. That's what I'd like to see. How you get there is harder. This isn't a prescription. This is, I got to wait till I hear what analysis has already been done and the other things that have been tried. But if you were to ask me as Citizen Lauren, no information already, what I would do, pay the teachers more. Sorry, legislators, if you were going to give me back my $300, they're talking about you're thinking to give us each for our taxes. Go give it to the teachers already.
No, there's nothing more that we would rather do than pay the teachers.
I'd
more.
rather give it to the teachers.
However, we're the only state in the union where the counties do not run education and give no money to the state. So the education budget takes up 22 to 25% of the state's budget. And, I wish there was a way. I mean, I've tried doing a lottery for education that didn't go. I don't know what else we could try, but you guys come up with good ideas and let's do something.
So that was a fast answer, Madam Chair.
I am right there with you guys.
So that was a fast answer. And I also, one of the things I came away with my conversations was how much support, how blessed the citizens of Hawaii are in how much support in time and effort and money that our legislators really do put the attention on education. And I also know from my listening, looking, as well as today, there are other needs as well, facilities, mental health. But you're asking me about teachers, and I must say, I think teachers is really, really important.
Thank you.
I think we agree.
Further questions, members?
Only because Senator Kadani brought up the lottery. Because of course we want to give our teachers as much as we can give them because they're worth every penny. For me, I just want to come with this idea. I'm not sure we can do it here, but this is something that maybe you guys can take away. So one of my great friends is a principal now in one of the schools in my community. But he said where he came from, like how Senator Gadrani said, some of the cities help out with some of the schools. But he came up with an idea, not sure if it can be done in districting on utilities like cable, water, electric, and designated to teachers' pay. It's like say every month I'm gonna pay $1 more to my water bill for teachers' salary. I mean, I don't know if they can do that. I figure since she said lottery, I bring it out of my head. I'm not sure if we can, but there's a way that because we gotta put our money where our mouth is. If we want the best for our kids and if we want the best teachers, then sometimes we gotta divvy up. I'm not saying everybody can, but if you choose to opt in every month, they round your bill off, not to $1. Let's say your bill is $198 and they round them off to $200 or whatever. Every month they round off your bill and the money goes into, I don't know, like I said, we can't because I knew, to the teachers' fund or money to raise for that. Do you think that something that you guys could consider at the Board of Education? Something like that?
Thank you for the idea. I think I wouldn't give you an opinion right off the bat because I want to see what the cost of implementing and what the advantages are compared to alternatives. But thank you for the idea. And I guess your idea also in response partially to your question as well, Senator Kumba. So I gave you a general answer, and in the end, the answer actually is twofold. It needs to be a strategic direction, choosing where the priorities are. Is it teachers? Is it facilities? Is it the mental health well-being? Where are the priorities and how, I think as Kaimana was saying, do they fit together? But in the end, it's also the implementation is in the details of, okay, exactly what are you going to do and how's it going to work and how are you going to measure it? And so that would be something that if I were confirmed, I would be excited and interested to try to really follow
You can
through
help
to
him
that
write the
level.
bill next year.
Great idea.
I have no problems with that. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Enjoyed your discussion. Our final GM 805, last but not least, is submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Education gubernatorial nominee Ken Kuraya for a term to expire 6/30/2024. Susan Tacola Davis.
Aloha.
You're with us. Thank you, Susan.
Of course. I just want to thank Ken for bringing his expertise and background from the Department of Education to the board. I know that, and I'm sure that our board member, Bruce Voss, is excited to have you, if you get confirmed, which you will, on board with the board. You have budgetary strength and experience that will help the board understand some of the nuances of Department of Education's budget process. You need to have the ability to discuss and clarify aspects of the department's budget and how it relates to students, teachers, complexes. I'm talking about the school level. The budget always needs to focus on the student. The board focuses on the students. So that's my last word. It's all about the students, nothing else. Thank you.
That's a good last word. Thank you, Susan. That's the only testifier that we have. We have several pieces of written testimony, all in support. Ken, thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. First of all, thank you very much for your consideration of the nomination. After Well, on December 31st, 2021, after 42 years in the Department of Education, my wife thought I was going to do all the things on a honey-do list, which didn't sit too well with me, but okay, fine. But there were people that came forward and asked, if I would be willing to put in, application to be on the Board of Education. And I'm very, very happy to have been part of the education system of Hawaii. I had good mentors, people that supported me. And, it was a situation where I felt it was time to give back. And so at this time, I stand on my written testimony and await any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ken. Ken, in your response to the committee, you talk about using annual program reviews to determine viability of programs. Can you elaborate more on what these reviews would look like and how they might be implemented within the DOE?
I think within the department, again, there's various programs, that we fund or legislature funds. Special education, alternative learning, EOEL. I mean, we work the budget, I help with those things. EL. So because of that, I think one of the things that needs to be done is a review of the program to see the viability, one of the programs, and to ensure that the money being set aside supports, what's going on within those programs. And also, are the personnel sufficient to run the program? Are there needs that are coming up where additional bodies need to be, brought in, as well as is there additional funding that needs to be provided? And then looking at programs and determining, are those programs still viable programs? If they're not, what can be done to either one, beef those programs up, or two, to ensure that those programs possibly, be cut or re-described and repurposed, to meet the needs of students.
Thank you, Ken. You also talked about expanding the academy and career pathway models to the elementary schools to maximize engagement and expectations of students. I do note that I know the interim superintendent has someone working already on this as part of, more programs for middle and elementary schools. And I'm really excited to hear that and to see more of this. But how can the board help other complexes expand the academic career pathways to the middle and elementary schools?
I think it's a mindset, it's within complexes, having, principals understand that those kids that are in elementary school will slowly work their way to middle school and then on to the high school. So I think in our discussion, Senator, we talked about how if we look at Waipahu, complex, how interim superintendent at the time as principal of Waipahu High School was able to bring together the people within the Waipahu complex to work together to see what kinds of needs there are, because they understood that students will move their way from elementary, middle to high school. And I think those things need to be communicated to principals to start working together to decide for the complex and the community what is important, what is the focus and how are they going to do those things.
Thank you very much for that. Senator, do you have any questions for?
Actually, don't have any questions.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. We've gone beyond our time, and we've lost our members. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here today. I'm just so impressed with all of you. I think Bruce and and Kaimana are excited because they can see the quality of, next new members that will come onto the board. I just am excited too for all of you, and just cannot thank you guys enough for being willing to serve. Look forward to letting you guys know next. When are we meeting again? Oh, sorry. When do I ever listen to you? Yeah. Okay, so we will have decision-making on Monday, April 25th in this room at 1:30. Is that the time we're given? Okay, and I'm so sorry. You guys do not have to come back. We can do this on Zoom, is that correct?
Yeah, or be live broadcast on YouTube as well. So that's also
Okay, so I'm so sorry that we can't do decision-making today. But thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.